Welcome to With Honors, the Honors College podcast. I'm Max Sandlin, and our guest today is Locke Adair. Locke, introduce yourself, and then I want to get to our question for the day.
I'm an attorney in Central Arkansas. I've graduated from Harding, went to Faulkner Law School, and have been practicing for about 5 years now.
So I had Locke come in because our question today is,
does a justice system that prioritizes retribution truly reflect a God who acts through mercy and redemption?
So a loaded question. Sometimes I know as a lawyer, you've got to hear something like that and go, all right, let's pick that apart. Like, is the justice system supposed to reflect God? Is that why the American justice system exists? Does it prioritize retribution over mercy? How should we think about these things? What's your first instinct when you hear that question?
Yeah, the loadedness is ringing in my head of like, how do we unpack all of that? And your gut response is something supposed to be more like God? Yes, it is. Something is supposed to be more like God.
Everything, yeah.
All right. But in what ways and how can it be possible to get close to that is the question, I think. Of course we can't do it perfectly. So we can only do the best we can. And what does the best we can look like for the criminal justice system, which is infinitely complex?
So I was thinking about, we don't have that much in the Bible, but especially in the New Testament, let's say. We don't really have that much about how government ought to behave, what government or politics even is. I think that's hard for people to remember because so much of American Christianity is, and historically has been, tied up with government, and that even goes back to the, Constantinian era and Christendom in Europe and such. But the assumption is everything in the wider society should mirror God and not be like a worldly sort of thing. But I was thinking about like Romans 13, when Paul is writing about what government exists for. He's saying, submit to government and such. He says it's an avenger. He says it is a minister for justice, and it talks about bearing the sword. And he limits the role. He doesn't say anything about like government's there to promote the general welfare or protect the common good. He no, it's just punishment. I don't say that's what he thought entirely, but all he says about it is this retributive function. So there's a sense in which I think, well, maybe it's not imaging God, but it is maybe doing the work that God says. But let's just talk about for a second, what is the role of retribution, punishment, and the role of mercy in the criminal justice system? I know you work in all kinds of law, but let's think particularly about criminal justice here.
Yeah, I think the reason for a certain sentence can vary, and a lot of
sentence meaning punishment.
Yeah,
for the judge.
Punishment, getting a conviction, and you're about to go to prison, and how long and why. You're looking at retribution. You shouldn't have done this, and because of that, you get this sentence. Or deterrence, whether it's specific deterrence for that individual. Say they beat somebody up. All right, we're going to put you in prison for 4 years. Hopefully that deters you from doing that again. General deterrence.
Learn your lesson, so to speak.
General deterrence. We're going to punish you for 4 years so that other people don't beat other people up. Say that, hey, we don't act like this in this society, and we need to demonstrate what the consequences are.
Sort of fear in the populace of punishment, or fear in the individual promotes good behavior.
Right.
Do you think that's true? Does it work? Is it true that like fear of punishment promotes good behavior?
I think it can work in some instances. I think it's also very complex. I think with people that are mentally ill, it doesn't work oftentimes. I think people who maybe are raised in families that are focused on really emphasize punishment, I think it can be like consequences, and that can be effective. Like we don't want to get in trouble. We don't want to get in trouble. You don't want to get in trouble with the law. You don't want to go to prison. You don't want to. Families that don't emphasize that, I think it might have less of effect. And in certain communities where your dad's in prison, your mom's in prison, your brother's in and out of jail, when that happens, then it loses its deterrent effect. Where
It becomes normalized.
Yeah, it's sometimes it's even cool if you're in prison.
Yeah.
It's a badge of honor that you get to wear for some kids. So it just depends on who you are, whether that really is effective.
So you're saying the justice system, part of it is about deterrence,
Yeah.
and part of it's about
Retribution and as well as rehabilitation. So there's all of these different ways or reasonings for punishment that we can look at. And as far as mercy goes, from what I've seen, I haven't seen mercy as I would define it have any role in the criminal justice system at all. Which
all right, let's hear their definition. What's mercy then?
my working definition right now, which I'm open to for that to change, is receiving something that you did not deserve, or not receiving something that you did deserve.
Okay.
Right. So, and I think it needs to be backed by some sort of kindness or love.
It's not mercy if it's like if I should punish you and you deserve to be punished, but I get a bribe and
Right.
so I don't punish you. That's not mercy. That's
Right.
corruption.
Right. And so I don't think I will ever see a judge know someone deserves one thing and says, I'll let you off the hook. Like, you're off. You don't get this. So practically speaking, I don't think mercy has a role in the criminal justice system. And so from that perspective, we can only get so close to having our criminal justice system reflect God, who is mercy.
Yeah. So you're saying like it doesn't reflect God and that it's not merciful and God is, but you're saying, but that's not a condemnation of it. Not everything can do everything. Like saying that, oh, that's a bad tree because it doesn't bark when an intruder comes around. That's not what a tree is. A tree does this. It's not a dog.
Right. So I think you can run a criminal justice system without mercy that is as best as one can do in a broken world where people do evil things. And that doesn't mean leniency isn't a part of the criminal justice system.
Okay, talk about that. What's the difference in leniency and mercy in your definitions here?
So a judge might be more lenient on somebody based on certain factors.
Like?
Role in the community, their character as demonstrated by character witnesses, how long they've held down a job, role in church, are they a mother or a father, what's their role in their family, past history and criminal history, different things like that can make the same crime, same circumstances, have different results of sentencing, where someone receives 10 years in prison, another one gets off on probation.
So you're saying like, okay, I've got a history of drinking. I've never had a DUI, but I'm well known to be, a kind of party animal in the community for 10 years. I get a DUI and I get a particular sentence. Somebody else, he's never drunk a drink in his life. He's got family. He loses his job, goes on a bender, gets a DUI, that the judge might give a different sentence, but that's not mercy?
Right, yeah, maybe so. Because I think people conflate mercy with just recalculating based on circumstances.
Recalculating the punishment.
Recalculating, like based off of the facts, giving them a different punishment, yeah. And so I think judges should do that. I think there is a place for reconsidering a particular sentence for a particular crime based on the individual and who they are in the community. But
tell me what you mean by that, who they are in the community. Does that mean like powerful people shouldn't go to jail and, a homeless guy should?
No. It's more of when you're trying to, at a sentencing hearing, you're trying to present evidence that they help the community and don't harm it. So you want to show that, hey, they've had the same job at Walmart for 10 years. That's helpful to the community. They hold down a job and they stay there, right? So it's a much smaller scale. It's not like they've been the mayor.
I see.
It's not that
punishing them actually ends up spilling over onto other people who are innocent.
Right.
Walmart has to hire somebody else. The economy suffers, or like you're saying, family, I guess.
Job. He's not able to provide for his family anymore, and so if he's incarcerated for 40 days. Let's say he goes to jail for 40 days, or he's on probation. What are the consequences of that? Should be considered, should be a factor. That doesn't mean it's mercy that's being given. He's just reconsidering what's just in this situation. And I think mercy would say, mercy's not about the individual, I don't think.
Which individual?
The individual receiving the punishment.
I see, yeah.
It's not about that. It's about the person giving it, I think. And I think it sullies a little bit of the Christian tradition of what we see as mercy and what God has done for us, where Jesus comes and dies and to save us. Mm-hmm. It's not about us. It's not about what we bring to the community. It's not about what, here we have these certain attributes and therefore we get mercy. No, mercy's for everyone. Mercy's for all.
Because of the character of God, the one giving
Yes.
the mercy.
Yeah. And that's not what we have in the criminal justice system. We're not, it's not about the judge and who he is, how much he loves, it just doesn't fit.
Yeah, that seems like one of the differences when you have a society based on law as opposed to a society with kind of a personalized authority, like a chief or a king in a like a pre-Magna Carta, absolute king. He might be in a position to just say, I grant mercy, clemency instead of punishment, and not because this is a calculated thing that's best for everybody or best for, but just because I love you and I choose to. I'm a merciful ruler. Like when you introduce laws, you automatically exclude such behavior, right?
Yeah.
I mean, such behavior is really criminal.
Right.
So then the question, and I guess that one of the things that's worth noting is that for God, like it's called the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven. God is an absolute authority in a way that nobody is in a society of laws. So that kind of, I guess, raises the question, is it better to live in a society of laws, or are we better off with, these like absolute rulers? What advantages do we get? Why do we need laws if, like with God, kingship, absolute monarchy is really the kind of ideal system?
I think what's helpful about laws is their goal, their aim is to apply the same in every situation, and have this objectivity about it. And if you put, and I don't think America's has a perfect example of where things are always applied objectively. I think
I don't think that either.
Like man always gets in its way and is able to corrupt anything. Mm-hmm. And but I think it does as good as a job as any government to apply laws as best as it can with humans running it in an objective way that doesn't show partiality to one group of people or anything like that.
I mean, and I think even like whether we argue, is the U.S. justice system more just than the Canadian or the French?
Yeah,
we
right.
could get into all those debates, but that's not even really the thing that I'm trying to say. And that is just the idea of a nation of laws in general,
Right.
any nation in which you have laws. I think you're right that you say, well, the problem is absolute monarchy is the best way to do things, provided your absolute monarch is perfectly just and perfectly powerful.
Right.
And that's fine for God, but we're not God. And so how do we muddle along as best we can in this fallen world? Because we know what happens when you get an absolute power, or even close to that.
Right.
And that is, mercy is not given simply based on the goodness of the king's heart, but on his or her own, political interest, or
Which then it's not mercy.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. It's just this illusion of mercy. Or if a king does, the chief says, I pardon this person just out of love, and then that person comes back, let's say they're a murderer, and he pardons them. They come back and murder 5 more people, and the king wasn't able to stop them because he doesn't have absolute power to do that.
Yeah, right.
So it gets back to that thing about like the tree and the dog. What is the justice system?
Right.
And it seems like one of the things that laws do, I'm thinking about this great movie, A Man for All Seasons. It has this famous scene, it's about Sir Thomas More, and famous scene where the guy says, I'd cut through all the laws to get at the devil. And the Thomas More stands up and he says, and then when all the laws were cut down and the devil turned on you, where would you hide? He says, I believe in the law because it protects me. I believe in the law because it's a hedge against all these other evils in the world. And I think there's an idealism that comes along and says, I just want what's right or what's best or what's noble or what's pure or what's true. And it's maybe a naivete to say, you're not going to find that here. You're not going to find that with a human judge and only Christ has that. You only get that in Christ. And so setting up these systems with somebody other than Christ at the head becomes, man, really, really problematic.
Yeah. And so I think the laws try to curb the human fallacy as best it can. And we've developed a criminal justice system where there's several layers to that and a proof beyond a reasonable doubt. So there's a heavy burden on the state that they have to prove in order to convict somebody. I think that an absolute monarch is far too prone to commit evil, and laws really help to counter the evil of man, to give everyone as best a shot as they can through the criminal justice system, which is not by any means that everyone does get a great shot through the criminal justice system, and it really hurts a lot of people. But I think America or other countries are keep getting closer to
doing what we can do.
Better,
I think about Machiavelli has this great line. It's attributed to Machiavelli, where he says, the stars are noble, but when you're walking through the woods at night, a lantern is more useful. And I think that, and he's talking about leadership, and it seems like there's something right about that to say. The ideal of, like Plato's, the philosopher king, this wonderful ruler, a really good person running everything, that would be better than a democracy where everything's average, or a law where, nope, everything applies the same to everybody. Like we can sit here and name inherent problems. Like if everything applies equally to everybody, that's not fair for disadvantaged races, say, or disadvantaged classes, or disadvantaged genders, et cetera, et cetera. That's not right. That doesn't get us real justice. But his point is, but practicality, given the fact that we're walking through a dark world, a lower light like the law is better and gets us closer to something like real justice. Okay, I want to ask this last thing as we're kind of wrapping up. When we think about not just in the courtroom, the judge is making the sentence, but even like the fact that we have prisons, probations, mandatory counseling, the death penalty, like we have all these different things after the sentence happens. What sort of things would you say the sentence is usually aimed at? Is it we said earlier, it does retribution, it does protect the wider society, it does deterrence, it does rehabilitation. Which one gets emphasized most, or does it depend on the situation?
It definitely depends on the situation. So like juvenile justice is very heavily emphasizing rehabilitation. And so I've represented juveniles who just repeat offenders over and over and over. The same kid, similar crimes. And it's like, but we keep giving them some shots. Like we give them quite a bit of attempts before really locking them up for good. And so keep getting them on probation, even though there's guns and drugs and all involved. There's people being battered, like discharge of firearms, like some serious stuff. Someone's going to get killed, potentially, depending on how this goes, depending on how rehabilitation goes. But he still gets out on probation, has to go to therapy. And so there's a lot of a strong push in juvenile justice to rehabilitate. But then the older they get, you should have known better and you're getting locked up is the feel. That's the vibe that I get in the courtroom when, depending on the defendant that I have, there's the older you get, we're not trying to rehabilitate, we're trying to protect everybody else.
Yeah, I think that's an important line too. The idea that like a prison is punishment, but it's also a separation of the criminal from the society of which they're going to prey. It's sort of like a restraining order that works.
Yeah, right.
Whether it's deterrent or not, if somebody's a dangerous person
Yeah.
discharging firearms, it makes me nervous to say, let's let this person out into the wider society, even though I care about rehabilitating them and so forth and so on.
Well, I mean, so the criminal, the whole structure of a criminal case is the state versus one individual, typically. So it's the state and all its resources coming down on one individual who has violated the laws of Arkansas. So it's a crime against Arkansas that this guy's out running around doing his shenanigans. So we got to get him separated from the people of Arkansas, so the people of Arkansas are protected.
I think it's really important too that when we say the state, we don't like sometimes we talk about the government like it's some third player. There's like the people, the criminal, and then the state. But really, the state is just supposed to be anyway the voice of all the people who are the potential victims.
That's right. That's right.
Sort of situation. And this is why we were saying like a ship's captain in the middle of the Pacific has to deal with a murderer on his boat differently than a rich society that has prisons where they can effectively lock people up. The context makes a difference.
Yep. Yep.
Well, there's so much more to say about this, obviously, but this has been a great conversation, Locke, and I appreciate you coming in today, and I hope you guys will catch us next time on With Honors.